Hey there, welcome to your personalized deep dive.
Right.
Today, we're going to be venturing into the heart of the Idaho student murders case.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically, focusing on some of the newly released evidence that's sending ripples through the media.
Okay.
The text messages between the two surviving roommates from that night.
Right.
And the transcript of their chilling 911 call.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a stack of news articles from major sources like Fox News, CNN, NBC News, and the Associated Press.
Wow.
All ready to be dissected.
It's like trying to piece together a puzzle in the dark.
Yeah.
These texts and the 911 call could offer a glimpse into what those roommates were going through during and after such a horrific event.
Okay, so let's set the scene. November 13th, 2022.
Okay.
Picture a small town, Moscow, Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
4 University of Idaho students, Madison Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin,
Right.
are found stabbed to death in their off-campus house.
Yeah.
No signs of forced entry.
Oh, wow.
The town is on edge. Fear is palpable.
Right.
Months go by, and finally Brian Koberger is arrested.
Uh-huh.
But even then, the questions linger.
And the 2 surviving roommates find themselves right in the middle of this storm.
Right.
One of them, we'll call her DM,
Okay.
says she actually saw the intruder that night.
Oh, my gosh.
Think about that for a second.
I know.
She tells the police she woke up to noises around 4 a.m. and thought she heard one of her roommates saying something like, "There's someone here."
Wow. I can only imagine the fear starting to creep in at that point.
Right.
Not knowing what's real, what's a dream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it gets even more eerie.
Okay.
DM says she heard crying coming from somewhere in the house.
Oh, God.
And then a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm gonna help you."
That sends chills down my spine just hearing it.
Yeah.
Almost like something out of a horror movie.
It's scary.
Yeah.
She finally gets the courage to open her door, and she says she sees a masked man dressed in black walking right past her.
Can you imagine being frozen in that moment, seeing something like that?
It's terrifying.
Honestly, I don't know how I would react.
Yeah.
It makes you question your own instincts, your own courage.
Well, and that's where the concept of frozen shock comes in.
Okay.
It's a very real and powerful physiological response to extreme trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Your body basically short circuits.
Oh, wow.
It's not a conscious choice. It's a survival mechanism.
Right.
It's like the classic fight or flight, but with a third option, freeze.
Freeze.
And in DM's case, that's exactly what her body did.
Wow.
She froze.
Frozen shock.
Yeah.
That's something I've heard whispered about in true crime circles, but never really understood.
Right.
So it's not about being brave or cowardly. It's a primal, almost automatic response.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's your body taking over, trying to protect you in a situation where your mind can't even process what's happening.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting here is that DM didn't immediately call 911.
Right.
She even went back to sleep after seeing the intruder.
Oh, my God.
A lot of people have pointed to that as suspicious.
Yeah.
But when you understand frozen shock, it actually starts to make more sense.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
We tend to judge people's reactions in these situations, but we rarely consider the sheer terror they must be experiencing.
Right.
Our brains aren't exactly wired for rational thought when faced with a masked intruder in our homes, are they?
Not at all.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
The text messages DM was exchanging with the other surviving roommate,
Okay.
who we'll call BF,
Got it.
around the same time.
I've seen snippets of these texts in the news. No one is answering. I'm really confused, Arn. I'm freaking out, Arn.
Yeah.
It just oozes with this raw terror.
Exactly. And it's not just the words themselves, the tone, the frantic back and forth. At one point, DM even describes something that could be interpreted as a ski mask.
Right.
Remember, this is before she even talks to the police.
Right.
And then BF, clearly sensing DM's fear, tells her to run to her room. Now, some people might question the authenticity of these texts.
Sure.
But what evidence do we have to analyze?
That's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
If I were on the jury, I'd be looking at the language used, the timestamps, the overall context.
Yeah.
Does any of it seem staged or fabricated?
Right.
You're the expert. What are your thoughts?
Well, to me, they feel incredibly genuine.
Yeah.
There's a rawness and immediacy to them that's hard to fake. Think about it. If you were trying to concoct a story, would you use language like that?
Right.
Would you include those tiny details, those moments of confusion and fear?
Yeah.
It's not the kind of thing you can easily script.
I guess that's where human behavior gets so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
In these moments of extreme stress, our true selves come out unfiltered.
Right.
And if those texts are truly a reflection of their terror,
Yeah.
then it paints a very different picture of what happened that night.
It certainly adds another layer of complexity to an already intricate case.
Okay, but there's still that nagging question. Why the delay in calling 911?
Right.
I mean, it wasn't until almost noon that day that they finally made the call, hours after the murders likely took place.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time to wait,
Yeah.
especially after seeing what DM claims she saw.
That delay is one of the biggest mysteries in this case. And when you listen to the 911 call itself,
Okay.
it just adds to the confusion. It's a chaotic scene with multiple people talking over each other,
Right.
fragmented sentences, crying, heavy breathing.
Wow.
It's almost hard to follow.
I can only imagine the adrenaline pumping, the fear still lingering, maybe even some guilt or shock setting in.
Yeah.
It wouldn't exactly make for a calm, collected phone call, would it?
No, not at all.
Right.
Initially, it seems like their focus is on Xana Kernodle being unconscious,
Okay.
perhaps thinking it was alcohol-related. But then, that chilling moment,
Okay.
someone on the call says they saw some man in their house last night,
Oh, gosh.
and that changes everything.
So we're left grappling with that delay.
Right.
Was it frozen shock lingering? Confusion about what they had seen?
Yeah.
Or maybe fear that the intruder was still lurking nearby?
Possibly.
It's hard to say for sure, but it's certainly a question the defense is going to latch onto.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the heart of the legal battle.
Okay.
The prosecution wants to use these texts and the 911 call to build their timeline of events, to piece together what happened in those crucial hours.
Right.
But the defense is already pushing back,
Oh, really?
trying to poke holes in the roommates' accounts and create reasonable doubt.
It's like a high-stakes game of chess.
Right.
Each side making their moves, trying to outmaneuver the other.
Exactly.
So what specific arguments do you think the defense might use?
Well, they're already highlighting inconsistencies in the roommates' statements,
Okay.
pointing to discrepancies in their recollections of events.
Mm-hmm.
They'll likely try to paint them as unreliable witnesses, suggesting that their memories could be clouded by trauma or influenced by media coverage.
That's a common defense tactic, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
To cast doubt on the credibility of witnesses, especially when they're dealing with something as traumatic as this.
Exactly. And they're also bringing up Kohberger's alleged autism spectrum disorder,
Right.
which is a fascinating legal strategy in a case like this.
That's something that's caught my attention, too.
Yeah.
How could ASD play into their defense strategy?
It's uncharted territory in a lot of ways.
Okay.
The defense could argue that Kohberger's ASD might have impacted his ability to plan and control his actions,
Right.
potentially calling into question the element of premeditation,
Right.
which is crucial for a first-degree murder conviction.
So they're not necessarily saying he didn't do it, but that his ASD might have played a role in how and why it happened.
That's one way to interpret it.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how the jury weighs that argument,
Right.
especially considering there's no established legal precedent for using ASD as a defense in a case of this magnitude.
It's definitely a complex and potentially controversial strategy, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out in court.
Yeah.
But we also have to remember that the prosecution seems to have a lot of evidence on their side.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They've got that DNA evidence found on the Kabor knife sheath
Right.
discovered at the crime scene,
Right.
which is being touted as a key piece of the puzzle.
Wow.
They also have DNA allegedly pulled from Kohberger's family's trash.
Right.
Plus, they're reportedly using banking and shopping records, surveillance footage, even weather reports to build their case. It sounds like they're leaving no stone unturned.
So they're coming at it from all angles, weaving together a narrative based on physical evidence,
Right.
digital footprints, and eyewitness accounts.
Yeah.
But with the defense pushing back on those accounts and bringing ASD into the equation, how strong do you think the prosecution's case actually is?
It's still too early to say for sure.
Okay.
They seem to have a strong case on paper, but the defense is clearly ready to fight tooth and nail.
Right.
It all comes down to whether the prosecution can convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
And that's a high bar to clear, especially in a case with so many moving parts.
It sounds like this trial is going to be a nail-biter.
Yeah, it does.
And we can't forget the human element here.
Right.
The families of the victims are watching every development, every legal maneuver, every piece of evidence presented.
Yeah.
They're desperate for justice.
Right.
But they're also reliving their worst nightmare with every new revelation.
It's absolutely heartbreaking to think about what they're going through and the release of these documents, the text messages, the 911 call. It must be excruciating for them to hear those raw, unfiltered moments of terror, to be reminded of the fear their loved ones experienced in their final hours.
It's a stark reminder that behind the headlines, behind the legal arguments, there are real people whose lives have been shattered by this tragedy.
Oh, it is.
Their pain, their loss, it's at the heart of this whole case.
And it's a reminder that this case goes beyond just the legal aspects.
Right.
It has broader societal implications.
Yes.
It sparked conversations about campus safety, mental health resources, and how we as a society respond to and support those affected by trauma.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
This case has forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in, about the vulnerabilities we all face, and about the importance of creating communities where everyone feels safe and supported.
It's a heavy truth to confront, but this case underscores that we can and must do better.
Right.
We need to foster environments where seeking help isn't stigmatized and where support systems are readily available.
Absolutely. And now I want to turn the spotlight to you, our listener.
Okay.
We've journeyed through a lot of information today. Examined various angles of this case.
Right.
What's resonating with you? What stands out as particularly impactful or thought-provoking?
Each piece of evidence, each twist in the narrative, it all contributes to a larger picture.
Right.
But it's often the smaller details that spark the most profound questions.
Right.
What are those questions for you?
Imagine yourself on that jury.
Okay.
You're faced with those text messages, that delayed 911 call. How heavily would they weigh on your decision?
Right.
Would DM's frozen shock response strengthen her credibility or raise doubts in your mind?
It's a challenging scenario, isn't it? To detach yourself from emotions and analyze the evidence objectively.
Right.
We're human, after all, not machines.
Exactly. And this case is far from over.
Yeah.
It's going to continue to unfold to spark debate and analysis, perhaps even set legal precedents.
Right.
So keep those questions coming.
Okay.
Keep digging deeper.
Yeah.
Are there psychological factors we haven't even touched on yet?
Possibly.
Does this case shed light on the need for greater awareness and understanding of ASD and its complexities?
These are avenues worth exploring.
Right.
Conversations worth having.
Yeah.
Knowledge is most powerful when it prompts us to think critically and engage in thoughtful discourse.
That's the heart of what we do here on The Deep Dive, isn't it?
Yeah.
We take a deep breath, plunge into the depths of a topic, and emerge with more questions than answers.
Right.
But a mind buzzing with new perspectives.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's how we learn, how we grow, how we navigate a world that's increasingly complex and nuanced.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of the Idaho student murders case.
It was my pleasure.
It's been a heavy one, but we appreciate you being here with us every step of the way.
Of course.
Stay curious, stay engaged.
Right.
And we'll catch you on our next deep dive.